Yo, how's it going everybody? You got Sketch here and welcome back to the channel. On this episode we continue our retrospective of the Contra series by rounding out the last 16-bit entry which was an exclusive to the Sega Genesis. We're talking about Contra Hardcore, developed and published by Konami, released to the Sega Genesis in 1994. This here is one of the franchise entries that after years of trying, finally cleared, and this one lives up to the reputation of being one of the most difficult run and gunners out there. This entry would also turn the Contra formula on its head a bit by adding in new gameplay elements along with numerous callbacks and hallmarks of the previous entries, all in bombastic fashion through a gauntlet of 13 ruthless stages. It's certainly a pinnacle of the series and we'll take a bit of a dive as we finish the mainline Contra games from the 8 to 16-bit era, with the exception of Contra Force, though it does borrow one of its mechanics. Let's prepare to attack aggressively and let's check out the story. While some time has passed since the Alien Wars, we fast forward to the year 2641 where a squad of commandos known as the Unified Military Special Mobile Task Force KX, better known as the Contra Hardcore, who've been enlisted to investigate the rise in crime while in pursuit of hacker Neumann Cascade, who's compromised the security mainframe spawning unmanned robots across the planet. You can play as Ray or Sheena for a more conventional weapon selection, or play as Brad Fang or Brownie, both of which have specialized weapon kits and abilities. Once you catch up with one of the man craft, you'll meet Deadeye Joe, who depending on player choice will affect the events of each campaign on your pursuit of Colonel Bahamut. Your mission will be fierce, and this entry offers multiple paths, so you've got a lot of ground to cover. Gameplay wise, this retains the 2D side-scrolling style of play seen in past entries and mainly sticks with that perspective throughout the game, though there will be several twists and turns along the way of its 13 possible stages, which will break up into runs of 3 to 7 levels, each with mid and main boss encounters. You can hold up to 4 weapons and a stockpile of nukes which you can cycle through much like Contra 3. While you can't dual wield and fire like in the Super Nintendo entry, you can upgrade the base machine guns, which honestly wrecks majority of enemies in the game. Each character has different upgrade kits to collect through each level, which will vary the experience, allowing for either a more traditional style with legacy weapons like the spread shot, lasers, or homing missiles, whereas Brad Fang is mainly an up-close damage profile that will smack like a freight train but requires mainly close-range combat. On the flip side, you got Mobile Suit Brownie, who gets a unique prototype weapons and can double jump, making several obstacles slightly easier. Emphasis on slightly. Brownie is also smaller, making it a more difficult target to hit, but also has to jump to hit most enemies. This is certainly going to change the experience from each run aside from the branching paths, since character selection does also essentially act as a difficulty slider. Speaking of sliding, this new mechanic is something you'll have to get familiar with as it will become one of your most important skills in your arsenal. The slide not only gets you out of tight situations quickly, but also gives you a few invincibility frames allowing you to pass through enemies and attacks without losing a life. Another technique you'll need to get down is switching between shot 1 and shot 2. Shot 1 being your free aim and running shot, and shot 2 being a lockstep, letting you aim in all 8 directions while keeping your character fixed in place. You can also climb walls and ceilings like Contra 3, and this too will be a maneuver you'll want to be comfortable with. Amongst everything else, sliding and lockstep are going to be paramount to survival, otherwise you'll stay getting smoked. And if you're playing on the Genesis and have the 6-button controller, it is highly recommended to use it. While we're on the subject, let's talk about the difficulty real quick, since this Contra is no joke when it comes to the challenge you're about to face. If you look at the options menu, you may notice there is no difficulty slider, so that should tell you off top everything you need to know. Contra Hardcore wastes no time before throwing you into the conflict and leaving it up to you to figure out how everything works, and has no problem clapping you even in the opening segments until it all clicks. Once it does, while the difficulty is high, so is the fun factor. Original rules do apply here with one-hit deaths and limited continues, and this game is about to put you through the ringer as you choose your own brutal adventure to thwart the robotic army alongside several other enemy factions, some of which you've dealt with before. New to this entry are branching paths that not only lead to unique level progressions but also push the narrative to one of 6 possible conclusions once you reach your final encounter. The stage layout flips in a few spots, giving you the choice of either pursuing Deadeye Joe on the highway or going back to the research base to investigate a breach, both of which are sick levels. The third stage is the same regardless of path chosen, since here leads to another branch which is a hilarious Castlevania Easter egg and one of the earliest endings to unlock should you defeat the boss gauntlet within. Once arriving at the enemy base, you'll get your final choice to either fight or surrender, both of which change the last few levels. While the levels are a bit shorter by comparison, it's got several selectable paths, with this entry having the most levels in a single Contra game so far. It is broken up such a way to encourage repeat clears to see what choices lead to what outcomes. Graphics wise, Contra Hardcore sticks to the 2D sprites seen in past entries and doesn't include any overhead or gallery style perspectives, though it does use some clever scaling and rotation tricks like those seen in Castlevania Bloodlines. Where the SNES version uses Mode 7 mechanics with certain stages, Hardcore uses scaling tricks to shift perspective in the pseudo 3D space, like having characters run toward the screen and shift viewpoints during vehicle segments, which looks sick here. The visual prowess, much like everything else here, comes out swinging off the rip. Environments are vibrant and saturated with color here, and it works with the breakneck pacing as you blast through each stage with an emphasis on speed and carnage, which Hardcore has in spades. The amount of insanity that pops off on screen throughout most of the game is truly something, if not a testament to what the end result of a franchise throwing everything it's got at you might look like. You get a variety of locales, planetside and beyond, along each path, and the areas all have a lot of nice visual detail. From the parallel scrolling to the wavy haze of sun drip backgrounds, they're all coming in hot with the ocular assortments. Explosions and enemies are all gassed up here, as well as with several enemies using polygonal designs which shear and rotate during battles, and this much like Castlevania Bloodlines, is one of their definitive visual features, which again is an excellent implementation of merging the 2D and 3D space in such a way that not many other developers were doing on console just yet. This is visually quite the tour as you go through each run, and depending on the path taken, has their own blockbuster set pieces, if not several of them. You get a plethora of main and mid-boss characters here, and they come in a variety of sizes. Some will be mechanized insects and acrobatic foot soldiers, to massive screen-filling mechanized robots and alien xenomorph abomination, the likes only Contra could conjure. Bosses are all over the shop here, and several have multiple phases that will put the kibosh on you with the quickness. Boss characters are often heavyweights that are a mix of 2D and 2.5D sprites that stretch and rotate in vector graphic fashion, and these encounters all smoke. You'll see some wild looking enemies along the way, and this entry's style is definitely unique to the series as well as the platform. In some ways, its style feels like Konami's answer to the release of Treasure's Gunstar Heroes, whose team was comprised of ex-Konami employees. Coincidence? Maybe, but the graphic style DNA is similar between the two. There's also a few cutscenes as you progress through the narrative, with letterbox style dialogue while the adventure unfolds. These moments give you a breather while setting up the next foray into waves of enemies, gunfire, and flaming robot wreckage. Each ending cutscene is also pretty sick, with a couple that are pretty hilarious. With a total of 6 possible endings, there's a few that are pretty epic, encouraging multiple clears to see every ending, be it good or bad. This and Castlevania Bloodlines for the Genesis were both unique entries to their respective franchises, and both really went for it with their graphic style being quite different than its predecessors, keeping that familiar formula and dialing it up to the max. Sound-wise, Contra Hard Core straight up bangs with its raucous audio assault with big beats and even bigger explosions. In-game audio is fierce with crunchy and cranked up sound work that stays hype until the credits stop rolling. Hiroshi Kobayashi, along with several secondary composers, laid down one of the heaviest and driving Contra soundtracks of the series, being full of belters. Each stage has a variety of vibes, and the energy stays intense, mirroring the action unfolding on the screen. The soundtrack here also stands out with its more electronic music or even speed metal approach that has got some major earworms within its 13 stages, and it does retain that original Contra dynamic while mixing it up a bit. The boss themes here are also meant with some tasty jams to keep you grooving while trying not to get bodied. The audio, as mentioned above, does have some proper crunch to it, and the bass resonates like an atom bomb. The sound work here is pretty impressive, almost having that Sega arcade board sound from the Superscalar titles as far as the effects works go. This, coupled with some light voice synth during the character select, is also a nice piece of additional audio, also new to the franchise. In all aspects, Contra Hard Core really took everything the series was known for and enhanced it further, crafting an experience that was full of new concepts and ideas that really doesn't miss a beat. In the spectrum of the 8 and 16-bit Contra games, Hard Core is in a lane of its own, even with its past entries being heavy hitters themselves. Contra Hard Core really takes everything from the series so far and adds in even more advanced techniques and mechanics that truly make this entry a franchise frontrunner. The difficulty is absolutely brutal, that much is certain, though once you adjust to the pacing and the non-stop action, it's an incredibly fun game just like the mainline games that came before it. The challenge, while steep, is fair. With tight controls and an arsenal that can level city blocks, you're well equipped to run the fate on Bahamut and the Red Falcon once more. For longtime fans of the series, this one is a certified banger and totally should have a spot in your collection. Contra Hard Core gets a 9 out of 10 and comes highly recommended to fans of run and gun as well as action platform games, since this game absolutely slaps. It's gonna smack you around a bit until everything clicks, but once you're dialed in, you've got a front row seat for a memorable Contra experience that is as difficult as it is satisfying once you finally get those clears. With multiple paths and characters, you've got a lot of ways to shake up each run and see how the ending plays out, which drives the replay value up significantly. This entry definitely rounds out the 8 and 16-bit entries with a bang, and definitely is a must-play for action fans. This is available on the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, and was recently bundled with the Contra Collection, available on Steam, PS4 and 5, Nintendo Switch, and the Xbox One and Series X and S. This collection also includes the original Japanese version that gives you a life bar, allowing 3 hits per life instead of 1. For those interested, play this one however you can. It's worth the price of entry as well as the challenge. And I want to thank you all again if you made it this far into the video. If you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad you can use this as a resource. Check back often. We'll have more videos and commentaries coming up in the near future. Until then, take it easy and stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next one.